I'm Travis Brown, founder and CEO of Mojo Up Marketing and Media. And this is my podcast, where I talk to the most successful Black and brown business executives who've broken through the barriers of today's business culture. Welcome to Mojo Up Live. I'm your host, Travis Brown, and today I got a special guest with me again, big baller and a shot caller, clean dressing, my friend Eddie Gill, who's a financial advisor and a former NBA player, a former NBA baller himself. So welcome to the show.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me for sure.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to start way back to the sports, but I'm going to go way back in that vault. Like, when did you know, like, I'm different? Like, I can play at a different level, and this is going to be something I'm able to do?
Yeah, well, first, I mean, it kind of was brought up through a passion, right? You know, we're always at our best when we chase down a passion, and that's what I was able to do at a young age, and you know, live, eat, and breathe it. And then by the time I probably got to maybe my sophomore year in college, in terms of like playing professionally at the highest level and compete with the highest talent out there in the world, it was probably my sophomore year in college where I was like, well, this is about to happen. And you know, I won't be denied. That was the time where I really felt like I was coming, and I had a chance to go out and play professionally, and ultimately was able to do that. But I would say that was the time frame. It was my sophomore year in college. It was JUCO All-American, and because that was the route I took first before going on to Weber State. But yeah, that was the time.
That was like, I'm a dog. I'm gonna do this thing.
I'm like, it's going down. Yeah.
What I think is interesting for a lot of people, they think this journey is like singular, right? You go to high school, you ball, then you go to college, and you jump right in. You're a lottery pick, and then all of a sudden you're playing the league, right? You had a journey that's way different than that.
No.
First of all, I'd love for people to understand that journey, like how much of a grind that was, and then I got a follow-up question that's coming. Like, was there a point where you're like, I don't know if I can make it, you know?
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I'll start there and then move to your first one. That was never in my mind. Like, I'm not sure, or I don't know, or this may not be for me. That never entered my mind, which is borderline crazy, right?
Right.
Right, because the numbers say that it's more than unlikely. It's more unlikely than it is likely that happens for you. So. And I didn't really grasp that until later on in life. But even I was told that a number of different times, but it just was like, okay, that's for somebody else. That's not for me. So I'm going to get there. But
that is part of the mindset that makes people successful, which is like, hey, I understand the statistics, the numbers, the data. I understand what everybody else is saying, but that ain't for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on a different path.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. That's for someone else. I mean, you keep your disappointment and expectations and hold yourself to whatever standard you want to hold yourself to. That's your business. But I'm in a different space. Between my ears, I'm thinking something different. So, but having said that, the journey was not that of, being a first round pick and, they just hand you the keys to a team and say, we're going to sink or swim with you. I fell into the trap of watching mock drafts coming out of college, which is inevitable. That's something that we do. And at that time, they were saying middle of the first round, middle of the second round, you're going to get drafted, based on the things that I had been able to accomplish up to that point. And sure enough, I fall out of the draft. So, that night when I don't get drafted after the, kind of the announcers are mentioning my name, how this guy hadn't got drafted yet, so on and so forth. But I cried like a baby that night and got up the next morning and said, okay, here we go. So I won't be denied, and was able to, carve out a decent career, both in the NBA and played internationally as well. But by no means was it, one of these stories that you kind of referenced, right? Where people just think, oh, yeah, you got it. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, it's not.
And we're going to touch on your world now, being a wealth advisor and what that means and how you love helping people from that perspective. But staying in the realm of the NBA, professional basketball world, it's a business, right?
No
and I'm a fan from the perspective, love watching the game, coach, but like seeing that, and this is a business. What was the lesson that you learned that was like, oh, yeah, this isn't just about basketball. This is about money?
Yeah, I would say probably my second year in the league, and I'll try to sum this up quickly. Prior to that, I was in a minor league, signed to a team, I signed with them for the rest of the year, but the contingency upon that was they signed me to a non-guaranteed contract for the following season, right? Which means that following season I'm on the team, but I still have to make the team to some degree, right? So opening night, I have to make opening night to be fully guaranteed. So a week prior to opening night, GM calls me in and says, "Hey, you're good. I know, you probably got some anxiety around this. You've played great. You did a great job last year. We want you here, so don't worry about it. You're good." I'm like, all right, breathing a sigh of relief. 4 or 5 days later, about a day or two prior to opening night, my head coach calls me in, and I can see it in his eyes. I sit across the desk from him. He's got tears in his eyes, almost. He's like, "Ultimate, hey, we got to let you go." And I'm like, "Well," he's like, "I know what conversation happened last week. Here's where we are. This is what has happened. This is my second year of playing," and I just was like, "Okay, this is this is what this is about." And yeah, there's a lot of decisions made. Sometimes they're basketball decisions, sometimes they're financial decisions, sometimes there are other decisions out there that don't necessarily have to do with anything that happened in between those lines. So that was the moment for me, and I was fortunate to some degree being able to discover that early on in my career.
Yeah. And as you started moving towards your career, NBA, that's kind of how you came through Indianapolis, became a Pacer, but left and then still came back. So we're gonna have to come back to that one. But what's the moment in a professional athlete's life where you're like, I can't physically do it anymore? I went through this year jokingly. I had to retire because I pulled a hammy. I played in the men's league, lost a bunch of weight, got in shape. Started playing again, got a little men's league ring one time, and then the second to last game this year, was just a simple little move, bring the ball up the court, got a hammy, and was like, I had to retire. I had to put a post out there, said it's been a good run, but at 46, I'm retiring because in my head, like I can shake somebody, but they ain't going nowhere, right? Physically, it's just different.
Yeah.
When you're in that space, like you've played at this level, what is that like? And did you go through some emotional stuff, kind of going, man, I don't want to be done, but I physically have to be done?
Yeah, honestly, and again, this may be crazy me, or it may be realistic me, somewhere in between the two. I don't know. When I actually retired, I felt like I probably had more in the tank. I was playing internationally at the time. Whole family went to Australia. We went out there. My kids went to school. We had a condo on the beach. It was amazing, right? So, but I knew that was going to be my last year because my son at the time was, I believe, around 11 or 12, and I lost my father at an early age, and I know what that's about. And actually, my son, he thinks he equates professional basketball with dad being gone, right? So that means something to me. So I got to the point where I've made a good living, supported our family and got us on the right path and in a path that I'd never foreseen for myself as a child. So I decided, hey, I need to be around all the time for him, just because he's preteen years, those kind of things. Not to say that I wasn't around, but professional basketball requires some travel.
82 games,
it just requires some
or
travel.
Whatever.
Yeah, it just requires travel. That's just part of the deal. So I decided that was the last year I was going to play, and regardless of the fact that I could have. But I wasn't going overseas or anything like that anymore. I was just going to come home, turn the page, and do something different, just to be home with him and my daughter. So I was kind of in that position. Again, in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, I probably got some more years to play. Playing at a high level still, and feel pretty good about what I'm doing. But I just decided that I'm gonna shut it down.
Can you still hoop now? I mean,
in my mind, I never play. I never play. I work out with my son and my daughter every once in a while. We work out a little bit every once in a while in the summer, just messing around. But as far as playing, I just need some more hours in the day. You know what I mean? I just need some more hours in the day.
So how does one then go, man, I played at a high level, from NBA to overseas, and in that realm, like your life is different. The way people look at you different. You have a platform, you have celebrity status no matter where you're playing at some level. Then you got to go get a job, like career, start a business. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. There's two things one thing I have a passion for at the time and still do, is, while I was in college, professionally, there always was clinics that we were involved in, right? Going out and working with kids and teaching them the game, showing them different nuances of the game, that type of thing. And I always enjoyed seeing their growth, right, during those training processes. So when I initially retired, I started a basketball training business, all out training, had after school programs, group training, individual training.
And where was that?
Based out in Zionsville.
Okay.
So Zionsville is where my after school programs are. I actually still have those, hired a coach to kind of continue to facilitate some of those different programs.
Okay.
Have a Nike camp that I do in the summertime. But so that was one of my true passions. And then within that program, there was a guy who was in the financial services industry, which was in my mind, while I was playing, looking in the locker room, having my own financial successes and failures, watching teammates have their own successes and failures. And we obviously hear about the horror stories about guys having X amount of millions and, they stop playing, now they don't have anything. I'm like, meanwhile, we all have a financial advisor, but we can't necessarily get on the same page with them for whatever reason, right? So that was in the back of my mind. But, fast forward to my basketball program, had this guy, his son was in my program. I started talking to him about the industry. Before you know it, I'm sitting for my Series 7, Series 66, Life and Health. And I got all of that, at around 34, 35 years old. I'm 44 now. But, did that after not studying for anything for like 13 years when I graduated from college. I can tell you that was quite the task. But, fortunately, I was able to get through that. And here we are, a little more than 8 years in the business now.
So when we talk about now being in financial services, one, there's not a lot of black financial service representation across the country, let alone here in Indiana, where we are.
Yeah. Tell people I went from top 1% to the top 1%. Like that was my transition. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And so now you're in this industry. A couple questions. First one is, so what do you love about what you get to do now?
Man, I love the fact that, well, first of all, I didn't grow up this way. Like, reference, I lost my father at an early age. My mother was worried about keeping lights on and food on the table for me and my brother, right? So we weren't talking about retirement or, like, the only time we talked about money is the fact that we didn't have any.
Right.
Right. So all these other different tools and resources that are available to all of us, and there's a segment of us that have had these type of resources in their life experience, since birth. I wasn't in that space, and now the thing I love about it is now I'm able to share some of these resources and education to those who have not been exposed to this. I think there's a segment of us, you referenced the black and brown community, that have to some degree boxed out of that conversation. So when I'm able to share some of these different resources, I'm really happy about it. It really does something to me. There's a reward there, just being able to share that information, and take race, ethnicity, culture, background, take that out of it. Just the service component of it really means something, because it's meaningful to you walk around the street. It means something to everyone out here, right? So that's the piece that I'm passionate about, that I enjoy. When we're able to implement certain things for people and they, establish good habits, that's the part where I really see some real enjoyment.
You referenced the challenge that professional athletes have, especially NBA guys that have money and go broke, and that's been written about. But the average everyday person still has that same struggle trying to figure out how to make these decisions. Where do I turn to? Like, who can manage my money? Who do I trust? Right? You're not talking about like 401ks and 403bs and Roth, but like, how do people really, in your opinion, how should people really think about how to find an advisor? How do you trust one? How do you know they're good at what they do? Like, how do they navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is being able to reach inside of your network. I think that's the biggest piece, is people who do have some of these life experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, and explore some of those. Just having some deep thoughtful conversations as you look at what's available to you. Because the other piece of it is, a lot of people think you have to make millions of dollars to go and invest in your future. That's not the case. You're able to. It's all relative, and I always make sure I understand that, meeting people where they are in that case. But in terms of how they go about it, I think it's just conversation based. I think one of the other things is just being a little bit vulnerable, having some transparency about you,
Yeah.
and open up to folks and understand that oftentimes people are having the same struggles that you are internally, in terms of whether it's trusting, finding someone they like, trust, believe in. And there's there's a ton of third-party research out there in terms of different firms and that kind of thing. So,
And do you have a specialty in your world that you're like, this is where I love to spend my time, specifically in your space?
yeah, I think in terms of industries and folks that we work with as a team, it's a wide variety of industries. Me in particular, being a former professional athlete, I have a soft spot in my heart for professional athletes,
Yeah.
again, because I want to just eliminate some of those stigmas that are out there and highlight and amplify some of the positive stories that are out there, because there's a number of those as well. And then also just be able to provide some guidance and some wisdom in that space. But having said that, there's definitely a wide variety of industries that we service as a team. Business owners in particular is a significant piece of that.
When you think about how college athletics are changing with NIL, I mean, obviously you didn't have NIL back in the day. Is that a good thing, bad thing? What's your thought on that?
I think it's a good thing. I think it needs some adjustment, right? I think it was rolled out in a hurry to some degree to kind of appease the fact that the collegiate athlete or the student athlete should get some sort of compensation for their work.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely expedited the conversations that I have with prospective professional athletes, right? In terms of trying to make prudent, diligent decisions with those finances. But NIL as a whole, I think, is a step in the right direction. But it definitely needs some work. It definitely needs some tweaking. And in my own personal opinion is that ultimately, if the NCAA wanted to start to share some like revenue money, like some merchandising money, concessions money, those types of things, that's where you're really going to start to move the needle in terms of getting student athletes some compensation. I think there's a place for it. I think it should happen in some capacity, in a league and fair way, in a legal and a fair way. But calling it fair doesn't necessarily that means it's going to be equal, right? I went to Weber State University. The guy who goes to Weber State is probably not going to get the same compensation that someone at UK or Duke or IU or just by virtue of the revenue that those programs are generating.
Now, a couple years ago, you had the pleasure of watching your son kind of, I don't say follow in your footsteps because he had his own, but play at a pretty high level here, at Carmel in Indiana. So what was that like then going from, because I remember I was at a state championship game and I saw you over there, and I actually was watching you watch the game a couple of times just to see how intense you got. What was it like to have to sit down and just not coach and just watch?
Yeah, it's man, it was a process, I would say. Starting back when he was in middle school, because I had people while I was here early on in my career, I was still playing. He's young, 8, 9 years old. And people obviously know my background, and they're like, "Oh, so this being Indiana, what travel team is your son playing for?" I'm like, "No, he's not playing travel basketball. He wants to go fishing, so we're gonna go fishing."
Right.
You ask him today, he's a scholarship basketball player. He went to Grace College. He's in his last year there now. You ask him today, you want to play ball or go fishing? He's going fishing. So that's where his passion lied, and it took me at an early on. In our relationship, father-son relationship, that I had to understand that he doesn't have the same passion for basketball that I do, right? And I have a greater value and a greater sense of respect and understanding and want for our father-son relationship to be great, and not so much, my basketball relationship to be great, right? Ultimately, he grew to like it and love it a little bit more as he got on down the road. So he was able to earn himself a scholarship, but being able to sit and watch him was definitely a different experience. And he and my daughter both, it was time I won't forget. I really enjoyed. I loved watching them play, and loved seeing them use their natural ability to earn themselves scholarships. So it's a pretty special moment in times I wouldn't forget. But it was definitely different because. Again, I love this game. Like the basketball is the gift that keeps on giving to me, and everything I put into it has continued to give back to me, right? And he just knowing that he didn't
Yeah.
have that passion, I had to come to grips with that.
I mean, that's been part of my challenge is always saying, I want my kids I just want them to love something.
Yeah.
You know, because I was passionate about sports, baseball, basketball, football, you know, play college football. And so I was passionate about playing and competing, really. And it wasn't,
Yeah.
I actually probably love basketball more than I love football and or baseball, but it was about competing.
Yeah.
And for me growing up, that was the place where, you know, I could put all the bullshit aside, and no matter my financial situation, my parents' situation, you know, my black situation, it didn't matter because you couldn't stop what I could do on the court or the diamond or the field. And so I love that. But my kids, you know, I have an old one that's in college and she never played anything, which was great to happen to me first.
Yeah.
Because I had to learn, like, it's not my deal.
It's not for you.
But I want her to be passionate. She's super passionate about helping people and doing great things. Yeah. But I have littles now. I have 7. My little son is 7 and my daughter's 9.
Okay, yeah.
And so they played. And I got caught up and, you know, we're coaching travel teams and, you know, this and playing. And I have to have this whole thing. It's like, listen, if you want to just play and have fun, we could do that. That's all you want to do. You just want to play. Like, whether you're good, bad, doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
But when you say, I want to be great, I want to play in the W, I want to play college, like, then we got to have some different conversations, right? And we got to talk about that. So how did you manage the expectations? Because you talked about that a little bit. And what advice do you have for parents that we're saying that, like, we want our kids to be good at whatever they want to, but we're trying to figure out what does help them, what does hurt them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents are trying to figure out how not to make the mistake, right? What does that look like?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is parents fall into a trap, you know, subconsciously about, you know, things that they want to see their kids do. You know, for me, it would have been basketball, right? Yeah. I would have loved to see my son just love it the way I loved it when he was 10 years old, but he didn't. And I had to come to grips with that and understand that if they don't love it and don't wake up on their own to go do whatever they need to do to become great, then that's just what it is, right? And but to your point about if you say you want to do X, Y, Z, okay. And that's what happened with my son, actually. Once he was in middle school, I said, you know, hey.
I was gonna say, what age? He turned on in middle school?
Like 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
I'm like, hey, you want to play varsity basketball one day? And he's like, yeah, you know. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what it's gonna take. You know, this is what it's gonna take. And I referenced the travel basketball piece. He didn't start doing that until after his freshman year of high school. After his freshman year of high school, so he played only 3 years of AAU basketball. We started a grassroots program. Our very first practice, I'll never forget it. It was like, I remember it like it happened yesterday. I was pretty intentional about this question. I'm like, who here wants to play college basketball? Every hand goes up. So I'm like, okay, well, there's certain things that you guys got to do relentlessly, tirelessly, if you want to do that, because I can tell you there's millions of you out there that want to do that. And we're not even talking about professional basketball. We're just going to talk about if you want to play college basketball. And we actually took a step before that, and we talked about playing, you know, because they were freshmen in high school. Some of them hadn't played varsity ball yet. If you want to play, it's like there's certain things that you just have to do. And if for some reason it's a task for you and it hurts too much, and you just, okay, well, it's just not for you, and that's okay.
Okay.
However, and one of the things that I started to tell them all the time, they got tired of hearing it. Make sure your expectations are in line with the work that you put in. And if those two don't match, and you don't make a team, or you not making shots, or you're shooting 50% from the free throw line, tell me about the work you put in prior to. If you didn't put the necessary work, the adequate work to put in, you need to check your expectations.
That's how I see my golf game now. I'm like, you know, I have to manage my expectations because I'm not out there putting in enough work.
That's right.
You know, to get my game to a point that I think that I'm going to hit 13 fairways and 18 greens in regulation, right? So I've been able to disconnect a little bit, you know, when it comes to that. But you know, now you're still in the basketball world because you call games, right? And I've called game for some of the high school networks, and I mean, it's so fun for me. Is it fun for you just to sit there and people lob you questions? You get to talk about, you know, some of the cool things about the game.
Man, it's an unbelievable blessing. Like to be able to stay tied into the game at the highest level. Forever grateful for the Pacers and what they've been able to offer and provide. And initially, early on, they were super gracious with scheduling because my kids were still playing, and that was always a priority to me, especially when they were in high school at the time when I very first started. But Yeah, I love it. Like it's a great time. But again, it just keeps you tied into the game and just being around the greatest in the world to play this game. Again, that it's afforded me so many different opportunities. I'm just super grateful for that opportunity, and just yeah, I'm enjoying it thoroughly.
So what do you think about the state of the NBA at this point in time? You know, because people go back and forth. It's not what it used to be. It's different. You know, players, and I'm just curious to know, somebody who played I mean, everybody has an opinion, but you played the game, you watched the game differently. Like how do you feel about the game right now?
I love it. I mean, what a time to be alive for the current players. I'm not one of these old disgruntled, former players that are like.
You do look at that contract sometimes and be like, he got that and he ain't played.
That's right.
Like, happy for him, but
Yeah, the ninth man getting that right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm super happy for them. I think I was born 10 years too early,
right?
or 10 to 15 years too early. But having said all that, I love it. I love the evolution of the game.
Yeah.
The latitude and the freedom that guys are playing with.
Yeah.
Everybody's playing with straight confidence. There's no restrictions. It's not like, hey, you do this, you do that. Now, granted, people fall into their different roles based on their strengths and weaknesses and those types of things. But I'm seeing a lot of guys playing with freedom and confidence and being encouraged to do that.
Do you look at the game and you're a guard, and so I was a point guard too, and I'm like, I look at it and watch how just from a point guard perspective, like what these guys do now, and I'm just like just watching Trae Young shoot, watching Steph Curry shoot, like seeing what they do and the confidence by which they pull from is like. Sometimes I'm just like
what?
Like that's just nasty.
Exactly. It's like no such thing as a bad shot these days. No, that doesn't exist. Which is good and bad depending on who you are. But yeah, I tell people all the time, Steph Curry is a gift and a curse to the game, because he's a gift because you look in amazement. And again, you reference Trae Young, Dame Lillard, Tyrese Halliburton.
Tyrese is balling,
doing their thing. But to people who don't understand the amount of time, effort, and work that they put into that, especially kids in general. I talk to kids about it all the time. Like, they didn't just roll out of bed, pulling from half court and it's going in.
You understand, Steph had more shots yesterday, in the offseason, preparation than you've put in your life.
That's right. Yeah, just in one offseason. And probably in a month.
Right.
It's like the repetition. And that's in everything that we do, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think is, I always say that, basketball taught me incredible life lessons. The intangible piece is amazing, right? That's why I'm a true believer in, like, I don't care what your kid, is interested, is passionate, but like youth sports are amazing.
Yes.
Right? It's unbelievable life lessons there.
Well, we have the Mojo Up Sports Complex that's out in Noblesville. I used to be Finch Creek, so now it's called Mojo Up Sports Complex. We took the naming rights, and so I'm coaching out there. I'm out there seeing this, watching this, and just absolutely I'm so in love with the game. It's kind of rejuvenated me. What's one thing you miss? What's the thing that you miss most from the game?
I think it's something you mentioned earlier, is the competition. Man, I love to compete, and just being able to go out and really all the work that you put in prior to the competition, right? I think is super important to me. And oftentimes I found myself while I was playing or while I was working out, like literally in my mind, I'm like, be thinking about who's out there, what are they doing, like. No, they're not doing this, right? They haven't been. I've been out here for 3-4 hours. They haven't been doing that, and then ultimately just challenging myself, the internal competition, like, whether it's shooting drills. Okay, I made 7 out of 10 this one. I made 8 out of 10. I'm about to go make all 10 on the next rack. Those types of things. So the competition, the camaraderie, the fellowship that you have. We talked about the Pacers that they look like a team that's having it's so much fun together. So those types of things you definitely miss.
That's awesome. Well, hey, we got to jump into what we call the Mojo Up hot seat. So I'm going to ask you a quick question. Give me an answer or a phrase. So
Gotcha.
Easy one. So favorite place to vacation?
Man, anywhere where there's sand and cocktails.
So coolest city you've ever been to, because you've been around the world now.
The coolest city. Are we talking domestic or international?
In the world.
In the world.
Eddie's world.
In the world, man, that's tough. New York City.
A restaurant you love to eat at?
Sullivan's.
A brand that you love?
Nike. I grew up on that. I mean,
Right.
that's an easy one. Yeah, unfortunately.
Favorite sports team outside of the Pacers.
Okay, I was gonna say, yeah. Outside of the Pacers, the Colts.
Yeah. Favorite college.
I grew up a Carolina kid. I went to Weber State, but I grew up a Tar Heel fan and knocked them off in the NCAA tournament.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nothing like that, Ethan. Right?
Yeah.
A TV show you love, or something you've recently binge watched.
Binge watched. Man, I watch sports every night.
Right?
I watch games every night. But if you want to make me go to a series,
I mean, you can call it Sports Center. You can call it TNT. You can call it
live sports.
Live sports. Right? A movie that you think is just a powerful movie.
Man, that's a tough one because there's so many of them. But a powerful, meaningful movie.
Mm-hmm.
Man, can I go documentary?
You can do whatever.
13th.
Ooh, that'll hurt you right there watching that one.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite type of music?
Hip hop.
Hype song.
Hype song? Oh man, that's a tough one too. Anything Biggie.
Nonprofit that you love to invest in? Time or money?
Yeah. I got to go with the Independence Academy, my wife's school. Yeah, the Independence Academy. Yeah.
Man, I have so many more questions I want to ask you, and I'm thinking about this wrap-up question we always leave people with, though. Is, when it's all over, you have a number, a dash, and a number on your tombstone, and that dash represents your life. When people talk about Eddie, what do you want them to say about you?
Man, did right by people. Simple as that.
You're right by people. Well, man, thanks for coming by and chopping up with me. You get to officially wrap up our Mojo Up Live section.
Yes, sir. That's a wrap.